And we are live. And a good evening to everyone out there in the chat. Thanks a lot for coming out, and welcome to another episode of our weekly top 5 collaborations with the Westeros Ninja, that's myself, and the Dawg Show. And of course, as usual, it just features our top 5 lists from a variety of different topics. We've been doing Game of Thrones for the past few weeks, only because that's where the hype is, and everybody loves that stuff. So, I'm your host, again, the Westeros Ninja, and joining me as usual is Dawg from the Dawg Show. So what's going on, Snoop Dogg? Tell everybody what's going on.
Thanks again for having me, folks, and Ninja. Thanks for doing this today. Normally we'd be on my channel today, but I was having a little bit of YouTube issues, and Ninja helped talk me through my frustrations yesterday, and got everything working well and ready to rock today for our top 5 favorite Game of Thrones scenes of all time. So looking forward to this. So it's one of my favorite things to talk about is Game of Thrones, and what a great place to do it then with this community. So
yeah, it was quite the YouTube therapy session that we had going on there with the issues on your channel, right, Dawg? So, but glad it's fixed at least. So, and you didn't lose all your videos and everything like that, which is the good
right.
thing.
And I kept my hair too.
Yeah. So on tonight's topic, we will be doing our top 5 all-time favorite scenes from Game of Thrones. And what we mean by scenes is basically a continuous segment. Okay. So it could be a moment, if you will. I mean, that's probably the proper word. So, there might be a little bit of cut scenes, but generally the idea is that, it has the same music as part of the scene, the same cast of characters and whatnot. So, but before we get started with our top 5 lists, you are on the Westeros Ninja channel, which means that there is going to be some trivia. And basically, I call this basically Game of Thrones by the numbers. So I went around just trying to find okay, what are kind of important numbers related to the Game of Thrones TV show. And the first thing is that, the number 1 basically is the ranking of Game of Thrones has attained among the most pirated shows in the world. So it is the most pirated show in the world. The Walking Dead is second, which was kind of interesting. I thought it'd be something else, but evidently The Walking Dead is quite popular amongst the people who visit the Pirate Bay and all other kinds of, pirate sites. I don't condone it, obviously, but, everybody's different. So, and the second number is the number 47, and that is the number of Emmy Awards bestowed upon the show. So there's 3 of them for Best Drama Series. There's several for Best Actor, Best Actresses, but there's a lot in the creative space, right? So Best Costume Design, Best Sets, Best Cinematography, those type of things. So there's quite a bit of they've won quite a bit of Emmy Awards there. 47. I mean, that's a lot for a show that's been around for 7 seasons. So that's really impressive. Another number is the number 91, and that is the number of months that have passed since George R. R. Martin has published his last Song of Ice and Fire book, A Dance with Dragons. And that's basically 7 years and 7 months. That's a long ass time. So anyway, and I know everybody is really, really looking forward to Winds of Winter, and everybody has their opinion on when it's gonna happen. And I kind of think it's gonna happen probably after the TV show stops. What do you think, Dawg?
Yeah, I totally agree with that too, and I think I mentioned that a few times, but I think George was, I mean, it's a smart business plan, right? The show's going to be at its absolute peak with this final season, right? And that's going to mean more viewers, right, and more possible book readers too, right, to bring into the book world, right? So folks will be, more folks will be wanting to buy his new book, Winds of Winter, that'll come out after season 8. So
yeah,
smart businessman George is.
Yep, and I noticed that Bridge 4. Thanks a lot for coming out. We had a stream yesterday, and that was a great time. He mentions 10 is a good number, too, for the number of good men Bronn would need to impregnate the bitch at the Eyrie. And I would say the 20 is probably a pretty good name, too, because that's the number of men that Ramsay Bolton needed to basically cripple Stannis' army in front of Winterfell. So 10 and 20 are probably very good numbers. And also, lastly, and the biggest number is 174,373. Some guy on YouTube by the name of Leon Andrew Razone compilations compiled like the number of deaths for the past 7 seasons, and he came up with 174,373. So check out that guy's name on YouTube, and he has a video out there which is really, really cool. It goes, it's basically like a timeline video, and he's just basically, he has a counter up, and he's just basically, adding up deaths along the way. So it's really cool video. Check it out. And yeah. So what do you think about that, Dawg? 174,000.
I'm curious. Is he like counting the whites too, right? And
he's counting.
Like, how does he know exactly how many folks were? I mean, I guess he could actually kind of pause and see how many people were blown up in the sept, things of that nature. I miss what you said there, Milt.
Yeah. I mean, what I was saying was I was trying to get your opinion on it, but yeah, I mean, it looks like he was counting. I mean, I think the biggest contributions to this number is probably Hardhome, and that would be a really hard, count way to count how many deaths happened at Hardhome. Yeah, the Battle of the Bastards would be another really hard episode to count deaths. Blackwater would be tough.
He would have to like figure out a way to pause, right?
Yeah.
And count how many folks were like in front of the wall, or count all those folks, right? Then you'd have to find a scene like as they're standing outside, Castle Black, right at the gate there, right? And you'd have to like count all those and subtract them from that. Yeah. I think that would have to be a factor there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would be a bulk of it right there.
Yeah. I mean, check it out.
I'm sorry. Did you say, did you think he counted the whites?
He probably did. He probably he counted everything. So I saw the whites as part of the casualty list. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like the most deaths, I still think it's probably going to be Hardhome, because there were a lot of wildlings in that area that were pretty much destroyed by the Night King. Battle of the Bastards, I think the Northern Army may have only had like 2,000 men. So, you take maybe half of that as deaths, or 3/4 of that as deaths. That's roughly about, 1,750, but or a little bit less than that, actually. So 1,500. So, but yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to see how he would have done it. I mean, but the video doesn't show how he actually counts it. It just shows an ongoing counter, like a kind of like a tally, a continuous tally as you actually view the video. So yeah, I mean, it is a really big number. So it's very impressive that actually somebody actually took the time to do this.
You could fill like 3 football stadiums.
Yeah, definitely. And we also have to acknowledge House Mason, in the Battle of the Bastards, that made up House from the North. I mean, they contributed at least like 210 or something like that, or whatever they said in the show. So good for you, House Mason, and your 200 warriors with that, sacrifice. So with that, let's go ahead with our top 5 list. This is a really, really tough list in terms of trying to get the slides together, right? So we decided not to do any honorable mentions. But what do you think, Dawg, about the effort, the amount of effort you had to put into this list?
You know what? At first, I thought this was going to be fairly simple task, right? And yeah, it was a little rough trying to make the montage kind of look right, and trying to trying to constitute in my head, exactly what trying to factor in what are the factors that make a scene, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Where can I cut? Where are my cutoff points? Things of that nature, right? The music was a big factor too, right? And the tone, right? The tone set, the music, right? How many times I've watched the scene over and over and over again, of course, right? Things of that nature were my major factors here, Mel. How is it for you? I know you said it was a little rough too. Trying to make the montage was a little rough.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to make the montages were really, really rough. But in terms of the actual scenes themselves, I thought it wasn't that bad, because the criteria that I was using for my favorite scenes was basically how memorable were they to begin with, and the rewatchability. Right, I can watch these scenes over and over again. I would never get bored of them. So,
right. And another major factor too, there was always that this is the reason why I watched this show moment, right? There was just this moment of, this is why I watched this show. So
Yeah, and the scene itself could be, very dramatic, very moving, or it could just be very hilarious. And yeah, I mean, I have a scene, which is actually in my top three that I thought was just like, utter hilarity that I had to put in because every time I watch this scene, I'm going, I'm just laughing my ass off because of the amount of one-liners, that were actually spoken in this one scene. So yeah, but that's what makes this particular scene like one of the most one of my favorites. So yeah. So anyway, if there's nothing else, Dawg, I think we should start with our lists.
Let's get into it, sir.
Yeah. So again, remember, guys, no honorable mentions. We're gonna start off with number 5 and go for it, Dawg.
Right. So, yep, folks. My number 5 here, folks, is the departure of Janos Slynt in season 5, episode 3, the High Sparrow. So this is just a very memorable moment for me. There was a couple of changes they did from the book. I wish I kind of would have left it in this scene here, but looking back on, I will get into that as I move on, right? But I think overall it had a great tone to it, and a great message to the folks in the Night's Watch for not obeying the orders, right? So, I mean, Jon just became a Lord Commander, I believe, right? So he's just kind of just twiddling his fingers at the table, right? And the Maester's not with him, right? So he's asking Sam, hey, how's Maester aiming? What's going on, right? And what's really important about this is that he's like, oh, okay, I've got to do this duty, right? We've got to talk about the latrine pit, right? So, it's who wants to be, I've got to assign a captain to this crucial task, right? And so he assigns Brian, right? And everybody's like, cheering, and I'm thinking, Brian's, getting a head up on this industry here, right? I mean, he's looking at possible promotion down the line, as a builder or something, right? I mean, this is probably a big thing, but it was like it goes from this kind of moment, right, to okay, now he awards Alistair Thorne, basically, right? He basically commends him as and awards him as the first ranger, right? He names him first ranger, and they kind of split him and Janos Slynt up, right? Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like he had Janos Slynt. He wasn't going to tell him to go dig a latrine pit, right? He actually gave him command.
Yep.
I mean, he was giving him command of this post, even though it was in ruins or whatever, right? Things of that nature. But the difference in the tone of what happened with Brian, right, and how everybody's cheering, and Brian's cool with obeying the command, right? Now it's just totally opposite with Slynt, right? And his bark is much bigger than his bite, of course, as they show on the show, right? So he's just going to totally insult Jon, right? And there's just these absolute great moments of him insulting Jon, and Jon's face just looking blank, and you're refusing to obey my order, or that wasn't a request. This was a command, right? And everybody in that room, right, their faces, like you see Ollie, right, just they'll turn and look at them the way they're all doing this, and they say so much just from just turning their head, left to right and right to left, if you will, right? So just lots at stake here, right? And Slynt basically just calls everybody fools, right? He's like, send one of the fools that cast a stone for you, right? So he basically insults the majority of the folks that are sitting in this room, right? So Jon's like, take him outside, right? Yeah, Ollie, bring my sword, and now we have a standoff of what's Alistair Thorne going to do, right? He's been kind of buddy, he's kind of made it look like he's buddy with Slynt, right? But he's just like, you know what, Slynt, you done messed up this time, right? And just kind of turns away, and then Jon takes him outside. But what's great about this is as they're going outside, then the drums kick in, right? And the music plays the factor in these two, of course, right? So You know, the drums are pounding a little bit, right? And you're getting this, you know, this eerie music a little bit, and with a touch of honorability, if that makes any sense, right? You have Stannis coming out, seeing what's happening, right? And now it's going down. Now I wish they would have kept the you know, Ed fetch me a block part, you know, from the book, right? But I could kind of see why, you know, it didn't get put in, right? But somebody did fetch a block, of course, right? And the only other thing I wish we would have seen, as Jon was swinging the sword down, I wanted to hear a guy out there saying, "Can I have his boots?" Right? I would have liked to seen that, but you know, instead we got you know, the you know, Jon and the Stannis kind of, you know, bro look, right? And you know, the nod. So you got the nod, and yeah, that's one of my favorite scenes of all time. So I watch it over and over, and yeah, I love watching a Slint go down. So that's my number 5, Milt.
Yeah, I think great choice. I mean, yeah, it would have been totally funny if they pulled like a lemon cloak with the Hound, you know, in this scene too with the boots situation. I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I mean, poor Janice. I mean, Janice looked like some like, you know, U.S. congressman who thought he had the votes. So he goes up on the floor and gives this like really long speech about, you know, how you guys should vote for this, and then when it comes time for the vote, you know, it's like nobody's voting for him. He's like just standing there, you know, basically. It's like, what the hell happened there? So, and of course, no, he acted like a child and didn't decide to, you know, take over that one castle along the wall. And hint, trivia question for next time: what is the name of that castle that he was supposed to take over that Jon assigned him? That was actually mentioned in this scene. So, I'm not gonna say any answers, but be prepared for that trivia question. So, and yeah, but great scene. Poor Janos. I mean, he was getting it from all sides. Like even Sam, right, basically trolled him with that remark about him basically wetting his pants, right, during the battle with the wildlings in the closet with Gilly. So, I mean, I feel bad about that, but I think that was during the vote. I'm not sure if it was actually part of this scene. Do you remember that, Dawg? Was it during the vote?
I'm sorry, Milt. What was that?
The part about Sam trolling Janice Lynn about basically wetting his pants.
Oh yeah, he said,
yeah,
he would know, yeah, because he made an insult about Gilly.
Yeah,
right. How's your girlfriend or something, right?
Yeah.
And he was like, he knows her very well. He was, you know, cowering in fear with her, you know, in the larder, you know, in a puddle of his own making, basically, right? So something to that nature.
Yeah, but great choice again, and yeah, poor old Janos Lint. So we were mentioning before the stream, what Lord of the Rings character would you most likely compare Janos Lint to?
Janos Lint, you know what? Maybe Grima Wormtongue.
Yeah, that's probably a really good choice. And then Alistair Thorne could be Saruman, right?
That's a very good possibility there, Mel.
All right, so there you guys have it. Okay, we're including some Lord of the Rings talk here in the stream. All right, so we did our job. So great choice, number 5. Okay, we got the departure of Janos Lint, season 5, episode 3 of High Sparrow. My number 5 is none other than the King in the North. Okay, and that's from The Winds of Winter, season 6, episode 10. And I love this scene. I mean, and it's not just because of Lyanna Mormont basically, you know, shouting down like 3, you know, grown men, but it's really inspirational, and I can just watch this over and over again. And it's the first time I watched this, right? I actually, you know, kind of put a little lump in my throat, right? It's like, oh yeah, I know the Starks are back, you know, they're in power again, and you know, you got the Lords of the Vale, you got, you know, the Northerners, you know, just all raising their swords. I mean, it was just great, and yeah, and a great quote from this scene was, you know, basically the true enemy won't wait until, you know, wait out the storm. He brings the storm, and that pretty much convinced, you know, at least a lot of the people in the audience that what was really coming. So I mean, Jon did a great job, at least in this scene, of basically convincing those guys that, hey, you know, there are much bigger battles to fight here, and you know, who can ever forget like Lyanna Mormont, right? And her basically her quote about, you know, he's my king from this day until the last day, you know, and just like a little 9-year-old or 10-year-old girl just basically shouting down grown men, like, right? She shouted down like, you know, Lord Glover, Lord Manley, and also, you know, Lord Serwyn, like in a row. And I don't know, I just love this scene. I mean, yeah, you know, it could be kind of hokey, you know, but you know, but in a way, it's kind of cliche. But in a way, it was just really uplifting for me. You know, for somebody that's invested in the show, and just to see the Starks actually get back into power, you know, in the North, after they've been just basically been put down for the past, you know, 6 seasons up until now. It just felt really, really good. And I mean, we can't forget, like, you know, Littlefinger kind of standing in the back there, you know, that little smirk, you know, looking at Sansa too. So you kind of, I mean, it basically provided a hook as to what he was going to do next in the season 7, which didn't really amount to anything, unfortunately, but it was still there at least, which was good. So yeah, I mean, this is my number 5, dog. King in the North.
Absolutely fantastic pick here. One of my favorites too, Mel. Yeah. And I loved how you know, the segue into the scene, right? Because we saw the birth of Jon, basically, right? And they were like, because it was, you know, for folks that don't remember, right? There was this thing called R plus L equals J going on for like the longest freaking time for like ever, right? So, you know, and it was like, I'll never forget that reveal, right? At that moment, when the baby opens up its eyes and you see Jon at the table, right? And it's just, and the music was just, it was just, you know, just gave you chills, and just fantastic scene, and just leading into what was coming next, right? You know, our you know, Jon tells him, you know, the real fight is, you know, to the north of us, right? We've got to band together, things of that nature, right? And then little Lyanna Mormont comes in and does her spiel and dresses down the other lords, right? That didn't help. And yeah, and we needed this, right? You know, especially Stark fans, we needed this, right? We hadn't seen a good old King in the North cheer, well, since the phrase, of course, but I shouldn't have mentioned that, but since season 1, episode 10, basically, right? We hadn't seen a good rousing, you know, hey, you know, this is great, you know, and then, you know, here's our main guy right here. So awesome pick here, Mel.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm glad, dog, that you mentioned the music, because I mean, I was waiting for this music to appear again, because in that scene where they basically zoomed up into Jon's face, in the scene here, they used the same music from Robb's coronation, and that was just so cool. And then after that, you know, after you know, they zoom back out again to talk, you know, for Lyanna Mormont, and then, you know, the whole coronation with the whole new coronation, they used like brand new music, brand new score for this for the I guess the coming of the king, if you will. So the declaration of the king. So yeah, I mean, I love the music. It was so uplifting, so inspiring the first time I saw it.
Absolutely. That's perfect words for it right there.
Great. All right. So King of the North, number 5, and we're going to go to number 4 for Dog.
All right. My number 4 here, folks, is Tyrion and turtle soup. I like to call this scene here. So this is from season 1, episode 6, A Golden Crown, right? And I'm pretty much counting from the point that, you know, Tyrion tells Mord, you know, hey, I want to confess my crimes, and he's standing right in front of Lysa. That's kind of where I'm counting this scene, all the way up to the point of when Bronn decides that he's going to be, you know, his champion, right? So that's kind of where I'm cutting it off. I know I've got a couple pictures that aren't necessarily what I'm saying is in the scene, but I'll tell you why later. So, but that's where we're kind of at, right? Tyrion's in the Sky Cell, right? Or on the Sky Cell, right? But he's in front of Lysa, right? And Lysa is like, oh, imp, you want to confess your crimes? And she's all high and mighty on her. And just like this, and real quickly, just like how Jon was tapping his fingers in the scene I was talking about prior to, you have little sweet Robin there, right? Just tapping away, kind of like he's kind of like just absolutely bored, and he's just a little kid, right? You know, he just wants to make the bad man fly. That's all it is, right? But as Tyrion gets into it, right, and this is where Peter Dinklage is just, you see he's an absolutely fantastic actor at this point, right? And this is the moment in the show where I was just absolutely so intrigued with the Tyrion storyline, and I was an absolute Tyrion fan after this scene, right? When because you see the real sour look on his face, and the look of shame on his face, and he's going to confess his sins about the girl that he stole the robe from, right? And how he put the dung in his uncle's boots and things of that nature, right? And then what he did to the turtle soup, folks, you know, and you know, good for Tyrion for what, you know, I will never eat turtle soup ever again after what I heard what Tyrion did to the turtle soup there, right? So, but also, you know, to get a little bit kind of a little more serious about this, right? After he, you know, talked, you know, about the turtle soup, of course, right? You know, Lysa's like silence, right? And I think he talked about the honeycomb and the jackass, actually, right? He mentions the honeycomb and the jackass, and then little Robin's like, hey, you know, what happened next or something like that, right? So it's just absolutely hilarious, right? But now we see Caitlin Tully, right, who is, I think she's embarrassed about the proceedings that are going on, right? And you know, and of course she's embarrassed of the things she's hearing, right? She's concerned about who tried to murder her son, right? And who possibly tried to murder Jon Arryn, right? Things of that nature, right? And this is just a big kangaroo court, right? So, but now, you know, because I was, you know, thinking as I'm watching this, I'm going, how is Tyrion going to get his way through this, right? But you know, he says those three magical words of trial by combat, right? And because first he mentions, he goes, I demand a trial. And then we get to see what the moon door is, right? And I'm going, oh man, this is freaking awesome, right? And we hear about, you know, life is a little more elegant, you know, in the Vale, of course, or in the area, right? And now Tyrion mentions, you know, I demand a trial by combat. And I'm just thinking, man, what's this trial by combat? And I'm just going, that's just hilarious. To me, it was at the time, because it's Peter Dinklage, right? And he's asking to fight somebody, and all these knights are, you know, talking about how they're going to defend the honor of, you know, of the Tullys and their lady, of course, right? And I'm just like, this is hilarious, because the way Peter Dinklage is just kind of nodding and just, you know, giving these guys like the honorable look and the, you know, good for you, buddy, you know. But then, you know, he demands, you know, his champion too, right? And he demands Jaime Lannister, and then because we see the look on Sir Vardis, his face, you know, when he mentions Jaime Lannister, they cut it off kind of quickly, but his eyes kind of drop, like he's not really all that, you know, happy about having to face Jaime Lannister. But then Lysa changes the rules a little bit, and I found it interesting that. Because most folks, if that happened to them, right, where, you know, that, you know, they'd probably be in shock, wouldn't be able to say anything. But right away, Tyrion doesn't give up. That's what I liked about him at this point, was he didn't give up, and immediately he says, "Do I have a volunteer?" Right, anyone, right? Because he's just desperate. He has no way out of this absolute facade that's going on. However, he knows that if he does die, there's people around here that heard what happened to Tyrion Lannister, right? And it's going to get back to Tywin eventually, and you know, Tywin's going to get to Lysa eventually if something had happened to Tyrion. I would think that anyway. But then Bronn steps in, and after I was making the slide here, and for some reason when I got done making the slide, I had Tyrion whistling in my head, so I had to put a Tyrion picture of him whistling with Bronn leading through, because that's what it ended up to. But after this scene, it was another one of those moments where I was going, man, I love this show right now. I'm really excited to keep moving on to the next episode, and I really love Tyrion Lannister at this point too. And we started seeing his blonde hair kind of fading a little bit there too in this scene also, Milt.
Yeah, I mean, great choice here. And for everybody who's familiar with the Clash of Crows game, there were two characters here who can be defeated with a bag of gold. You had Mord and Bronn. So there you go. Two characters that can be defeated with a bag of gold. So anyway, yeah, great scene. And what I liked about this scene was the fact that I think this was, you know, one of the earliest examples of basically Tyrion Lannister's intelligence and wit, right? And I think, you know, after this scene, yeah, I mean, you almost fell in love with Tyrion, especially his wit and his humor. I mean, it was just awesome how he was just basically playing, you know, Lysa Arryn, and basically, you know, just acting so confident and so sarcastically to this whole farce of a trial, right? Essentially, this was just a farce, right? It didn't really mean anything, and yeah, I mean, Caitlin Stark uh, actually had a really good moment here because once Tyrion demanded that trial by combat, you saw that look on Caitlin Stark's face, right? It was like, oh man, no, we may lose this potentially valuable hostage that I have to this in a trial by combat, and no, that's bad news for her side if you know if they basically lose that hostage, especially Tywin Lannister, who probably has found out about the abduction coming down on them. So yeah, I mean, great scene, and yeah, the jokes were great. I still don't know. I asked in the chat like, what is exactly is the ending of that of that honeycomb and a jackass joke because Liza Aaron just basically interrupted the whole thing. So I blame her for that, and I'm sure it's out there somewhere. Hopefully someone will figure it out or actually can post it later on in the stream. But I definitely want to know about that. And yeah, poor Vardis Egan. He got his, he fought with honor and he fell through the moon door. So good on him for that, for being honorable at least. So good choice, Dawg. Any other words? Any other thoughts about this scene?
Oh, the only thing I wanted to mention real quickly was and it was just kind of a salute to Peter Dinklage's acting because as silly as he's being, right? He goes from being silly to showing that he can act like he's super honorable and in like a court of law, if you will, sort of thing, right? Where now it's serious and I'm demanding trial by combat in front of the gods here, right? It's the tone change, all right? I really noticed that about it, and I thought it was brilliant on his acting part.
Awesome. All right, so number 4, we got Tyrion and the Turtle Soup. Season 1, Episode 6, Golden Crown, set at the Eyrie. For my number 4, okay, it may be surprising to a lot of people in this chat, but I love this scene. It is basically, you are the Princess Shireen of House Baratheon, and you are my daughter, okay? From Sons of the Harpy, Season 5, Episode 4, and, this is a really, really moving scene, especially if you can, if you saw kind of like the portrayal of Stannis Baratheon in the show, as well as how he's portrayed in the books. He's a very cold, honorable, just man, but very, very cold, okay, personally. And he has absolutely no interpersonal skills whatsoever. No empathy, no sympathy for a lot of things. And it's just this one scene was just so touching and moving. Basically is really about a daughter's unconditional love for her father here. And the way it started out was so great. It basically shows, Shireen as a kind of like the lonely child just standing in the corner, just being quiet, and basically in her dad's office at Winterfell. And, she's just standing there, just not doing anything really, just looking sad. And then finally Stannis just says, are you lonely? And then, she starts going off about, are you ashamed of me and things like that. And, he has this really good line about, she basically says, oh, I'm just bored. And then, he has this really good line about, my father used to tell me that boredom indicated a lack of inner resources. I thought that was cool. I mean, it was like total Stannis at that point. And, it was just a really touching moment between these two really, really good actors. And so they go on, and then basically, Shireen just asks, her dad, are you ashamed of me? And then Stannis basically goes into the story about, how he basically hired all these people when she was a baby, when she first contracted grayscale, to basically try to cure her and try to save her life. It's just all these things that Stannis did just to make sure that she stayed alive. And it actually gave you a glimpse of his, humanity. And then at the last scene, basically at the last part of this scene, he just mentions that, hey, you are the Princess Shireen of House Baratheon, you are my daughter. And after that, she just lights up, right? And basically hugs her dad. And, he has kind of like this look at the end, like, what's going on here? Because I don't think he's ready to actually kill her at this point. But later on in the season, but it's just really, really moving. And, this is a Stannis that I kind of choose to remember because later on in the season, in episode 9, I just feel like, you know, his character just got assassinated by the writers of the story, because I don't really think book Stannis would ever do that to his daughter. But I don't know. It was just really touching, and every time I watch this, you know, again, it's one of these lumps in my throat as well, because, you know, it really does portray like a daughter's unconditional love for her father. That's really touching.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mill. Yeah, this is a very powerful scene, and yeah, it's tough. Yeah, it's one of the ones that are a little more tougher for me to watch. You know, just hindsight being 2020, of course, right? Because you know, knowing what's going to happen, of course. But yeah, and the line you mentioned about the boredom thing, that's just great, because it was just like, you know, it was classic Stannis. Yeah. You know, kind of still being a teacher to her, you know, a little bit here and there, but then yeah, we get a nice in-depth look at you know, what you know, a little backstory on what happened to Shireen, right? And it kind of reminds me of well, it's kind of a little opposite of like Tyrion and Tywin, sort of, right? Where Tywin seems like he's, you know, pretty much ashamed of Tyrion, of course, right? And Stannis is kind of showing us the opposite of that, right? Somebody that might, you know, it's a little different, right? Where, you know, he's not, you know, treating her like Tywin does Tyrion, right? So
yep. Yeah, and
that's kind of where I was. That's where I was kind of thinking with that. Now, you know, it's, and this was, to me, this was Stannis at his peak, and yeah, unfortunately, it didn't work out, of course, right? But yeah, I think this was they definitely reeled us in a little bit more here at this point, where you know, I was a little more compelled with the Stannis storyline and Shireen and rooting for him, right? So but yeah, but they reeled us in and knocked us in the face there at Winterfell.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and it makes it just really much more heartrending, right? When, you know, you find out exactly what he does to, you know, his daughter, you know, later on in the season. So, you know, because he does show that kind of glimpse of humanity, you know, and there's always been hints that, you know, Melisandre wants to burn her, right? You know, to get, you know, basically to help Stannis along his way to fulfill his destiny, but Stannis was always against it, and, you know, he was always reluctant, right? And I thought this scene pretty much, you know, cemented that idea that he was going to actually burn her. And then, you know, out comes the gut punch, right, in episode 9, where he actually does the deed. And yeah, it's crazy. And so Bridge makes a point about he thinks that in the books that Stannis will end up burning Shireen. And right now, as it stands right now, like, Stannis is pretty much, you know, near Winterfell right now, you know, with his army, and Shireen is still at Castle Black, you know, with Melisandre and Selyse, Queen Selyse. And it'll be interesting to see what happens there. You know, so does Stannis actually survive the Battle of Ice, you know, in front of Winterfell, and come back and burn her, or does she, you know? So yeah, it'd be really, really cool to see what happens in the story as we move forward. But yeah, I know, it's just, again, you know, this is how I choose to remember Stannis, and, you know, whatever happened afterwards is just pure character assassination. So, all right, great. So we are on our number 3.
All right.
Favorite scenes, and we will go with Dawg. Shoot.
And yeah, folks, my number 3 scene here is Lami's Avenged, I call it. So I'm kind of starting this scene a little bit outside. I think the scene's kind of 2 parts. There's kind of outside and inside, right? But they coincide with one another so much. I had to put it in, right? So you know, we get the you know, they're standing outside the inn there, and Arya and the Hound, of course. And you know, first thing we hear is Arya saying, "I'm hungry. You're hungry," right? And just those little words about you know, even though, you know, Arya's the Hound's captive, right? You could still see she was still had that little bit of compassion for his hunger, right? Just that one line, right? It just kind of, it kind of led me to believe that they were going to be friends someday, right? So the little details I see sometimes, right? But we get the great thing about Pulliver's coming out and he's like, he killed my friend Lamy, right? And Hound's like, what the F's a Lamy, right? And you can see her trying to stay serious, but almost just absolutely just busting up laughing as he asked the Lamy question, right? But now she sneaks off, kind of, right? And he's like, what are you doing right now, right? And they actually, they have no choice but to walk in as the door opens up, as the Hound's saying, hey, we're not going in here. I don't care if he ate your friend. We're not going into this place, right? So, but they walk in and we get the great banter. As the what was that guy's name? That wasn't the tickler. Pulliver.
It was Pulliver.
Right? Yeah. So, he comes over. He's like, I know you. You're the Hound, and we wear the King's colors, and we're freaking awesome, right? And it's like a single A ball player coming up to like a Major League Baseball player, right? And just telling him how great of a baseball player he is or something, right? and so the Hound is just like, he's famished, right? He's hungry. He has no respect for any of these, people that he's seen in this place, right? As far as their King's colors and things of that nature, right? So, and then just the absolute sheer disrespect that the Hound showed him by taking his drink and drinking it. That's usually a no-no amongst, folks. It's like, that's usually something's going down. That's like the equivalent of somebody taking their glove off and kind of slapping you in the face with it back in the day, right? So as he says, listening to you makes me thirsty, and he just drinks that man's drink. And now we get the symbolism of the chickens in the room, right? And how this major league fighter is going to eat all the chickens if they don't shut up and bring him some real chicken to eat here, right? So also Arya is great in this, as she's just sitting there, just the thing she does with her eyes, right? As the Hound's bantering back and forth with Arya or with Pulver, excuse me, right? Just as this guy would say something, the way she would look at him and stuff, the way they captured that very well, right? And then we get the great, fight scene indoors, of course, right? And I love how they had that the music. There's no music in this until the Hound has the knife at his throat, right? Well, as he's about to put that guy's head into the knife, right? That's when the music kind of starts blending in, right? The music starts up a little bit, and it's this eerie, chilling music, like you'd see in a horror film or something, or you'd hear in a horror film, right? And then this guy's that scream is awesome. It's kind of like a Lyria Sand scream almost. It's in that ballpark for a dude, right? So I love that. That scream that guy makes, right? But now the music really kicks in as Arya just shows. And I love the expression of absolute rage on her face, because that's what she should be at this point, right? F the Lannisters, F the King, all that stuff. I'm Arya Stark, and it's time to party right now, right? So she takes this dude out, right, and then sticks another guy with a long sword, I believe, and then Lamy's avenged, right? Is it kind of campy, poetic justice kind of thing? Yes, but it's perfectly campy, poetic justice. As we see Pulliver meet his end, and Arya levels up and gets her pony, and the Hound gets his chicken, and the music is beautiful as they go into seeing just this absolute wasteland as it's leading us into what's to come in season 4. So probably it was definitely one of my favorite season 1 episodes.
Yeah. So do you think that a KFC can actually kind of parlay this scene into making a really successful commercial? With the Hound, and then showing him with a bucket of KFC.
Work for like Popeye's chicken or something.
Yeah. I'm thinking Popeyes or KFC would be really, really. I think they have an opportunity here to actually, leverage the scene and to make a really, really great commercial. Well, we'll see what happens after.
I would if I were him, because he might as well make a few bucks off it, because I bet you everywhere he goes, people just ask him can you talk about the chickens?
But great scene here. Yeah, and this is also the scene after the fight, right, where Arya regains Nito, right? And the cool thing about this scene is that afterwards, okay, when they first appeared on this scene, right, basically they were using one horse. It was the Hound and Arya in front of him, right? Just basically, on one horse. And then after the fight, you see them leaving on two horses. So I think there's some kind of symbolism here where the Hound is finally, respecting Arya as a great fighter, and she deserves her own horse. Either that, or they just only had one horse, and then now they have like 5 horses to choose from. But still, I mean, I may be overthinking it, but I think that's kind of a cool little scene there, a cool little a nugget of information there. Yeah, but the fight scene was great. Like indoor brawling is always a good thing, right? A lot of punches, a lot of fighting, a lot of using dirty weapons. Like, you see Arya there with basically a big mug or a pitcher, right? Basically slamming over the guy's head. And yeah, justice for Lamy. He gets stabbed through the throat. Potiphar gets stabbed through the throat, just like Lamy Greenhands did. And somebody needs to tell us, like, what does Lamy stand for? Okay, because is that short for like Lomias or something else, or is there like another proper name for Lamy?
Might be first. Maybe he likes salami or something.
Oh, like Lamy salami? Okay.
Might be.
Yeah.
Lamy salami sandwich. I'm gonna invent that.
Yeah. All right. There you go. So Dawg's promising to invent a Lamy sandwich. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, yeah, but yeah, really funny scene, and it's cool and exciting. It was also kind of funny at the same time, right? Because the Hound, he always has these golden lines, and yeah, he brought it out here, right? I mean, he brought his A game here for in terms of like lines, one-liners, and everything else. So
I think it's a perfect blend of the comedy, like you said.
Yeah.
It's a perfect blend of the comedy, the music, and the factor of death possibly happening here, right? So I mean, there's seriousness involved here too, right? So yeah, great, Mel.
Yeah, well, evidently somebody Googled it and said, it's Bridge 4, that Lamy is a real name. So, all right, man.
Wow.
Okay, so there you go. Somebody actually called their kid Lamy. So, all right. And speaking of Arya and the Hound scenes, my number 3 is because Trent had armor and a big effing sword. Okay, and that's from the first of his name, season 4, episode 5. It's basically the Hound and Arya in front of a really scenic place, right in front of a waterfall, and they're arguing about Cerro Farrell and basically Arya's fighting style. To me, I mean, this was classic comedy in a way, and I love these funny scenes, really funny, memorable scenes, and basically in both sides, right, they had these great one-liners, where I mean, it's like the Hound. So Arya's going ahead practicing her bravasti, sword play, and then Hound's asking her, "So what are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, I'm practicing." And he goes, "What? Ways to die?" Stuff like that. So he has absolutely no respect for that kind of bravasti water dancing style whatsoever. And Arya just gives him this look, right? And she starts going away, impressing him, with her moves and her cartwheels and everything else. And then, finally the Hound asks Arya, "Who taught you this stuff?" It goes, "Cerro Farrell, the greatest swordsman in the world." And the Hound just goes with these, basically insults to Cerro about like, well, yeah, I know Bravosi's, yeah, I bet his hair is greasier than Joffrey's, blah, 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 right? So I can't say that on air, but, you guys get the gist of that. So, I mean, to me, it was just so funny. And one of the most classic lines, for me, I think it's really, really funny was, Cerro goes, basically Arya goes, he died because he only had a wooden sword. And then the Hound goes, "The greatest swordsman who ever lived didn't have a sword. Ha ha ha." He just basically just started egging Arya on. And I mean, I just loved it. I think this is such a funny scene. And the cool thing was, it was set in such a place that was so beautiful, right? You had the waterfall in the background, you had a nice, peaceful, pastoral kind of experience there. And yeah, and I think this is the first time, after season 1 that we actually saw like Arya building up her skills in a way, right, in terms of her fighting skills and her sword play. And I don't know, I just loved it. And I mean, there are guys, if you you guys should actually watch this scene again because there are a lot of better there are a lot of really good one-liners in this whole scene, and mostly from the Hound. But I mean, this was classic Hound at his best. So anyway,
Yeah,
and lastly, you also got the Hound basically backslapping Arya, and down she goes, but she gets up right away. So it's awesome. Shows everybody her toughness.
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite Arya Hound scenes, of course, too, as well. So I swear to God, if they just, like, after the show was over and they just had a Hound and Arya show, I would tune in every week to watch it. I mean, it was just, I used to just absolutely love these scenes with these two. And this was absolutely perfect as he walks up and sees her, he's like, what the hell is that shite,
Yeah.
And just the lines as he is just absolutely agitating her, and he knows he's agitating her, right? And at the same time, he's pretty much kind of telling her, the realistics of things, right? There's armor and swords, and but the expression on his face as she actually sticks him, because you can tell he was like, damn, that was pretty close. And you better give her a lesson about ways to duck, maybe, right? So great scene. And then the fantastic scene is how he grabs her sword, right, gives her the lesson, this is why your master died, and and this and that, right? And he looks at her sword and then he flips it and hands it to her, right? And I thought that was still great because he was still like the teacher, handing her the tool, basically, right? Still, right? So
and and I think this is the moment where perhaps Arya kind of stops her hero worship of Sarah Farrell and basically gets a reality check here, right? That having a lot of armor and a freaking big sword, is can overwhelm somebody who's very finesse oriented and basically doesn't have a lot of protection and offensive firepower, so it's I think it's a great reality check also for Arya in terms of there are other styles of fighting and there are very brutal styles of fighting. So
I'm sorry, Milt, I missed that last part, buddy.
Anyway, no, very brutal.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying that it was just a reality check for Arya. So I think we are gonna go now with our number 2.
Okay.
So, and Dawg, you are up.
All right. So my number 2, folks, here is Cerseis Revenge, I call it. So this is from season 6, episode 10, The Winds of Winter, right? So I'm pretty much starting this scene from when Cersei starts, maybe just 1 second before, maybe one little clip before that, where they're like, go get Cersei, right? She's in the Red Keep, things of that nature, right? But we see Cersei pouring the wine, of course. Now, there's this absolutely fantastic music that's been blended in with the piano and things of that nature prior to the lead up of this, right? But we see Cersei pouring the wine, basically, and then we get Pycelle, his demise, of course, right? And the eerie music. The music was my favorite. I'm going to sit here and just say music about 500 times throughout this entire scene, but I mean that's what pretty much made it for me. It was the music and the special effects, of course, and things of that nature, and everything that was at stake. Because and they blended in Varys's lines a little bit in with Qyburn, of course, right? But as the little birds are coming out to kill Pycelle, we get the eerie Devil Child music, I like, or Devil Child choir, right? As they start singing, right, and it's just even more eerie, and Pycelle just meets this this terrible demise, if you will, right? We get clips of as they're moving to Lancel's situation, right, as he's following the other kid into the tunnel, and you can just hear like the piano just ding 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 a little bit, right, and then back to the choir, and I believe the organs start coming into it now, right, the pipe organs, as Lancel gets stuck in the hamstring, I think, or something that made him totally not be able to walk and things of that nature, right? And yeah, just absolutely eerie as now he's got to crawl down the tunnel, and it's just absolutely poetic and just beautifully. It's just beautiful fantasy, I call it. Is it realistic? Could we sit here and say, the timing is absolutely so perfect on how all this stuff occurred and things of that nature, but it's just so well done. The music's just so perfect that I watch the scene over and over, throughout the year, I'm sure, since I've seen it, of course, right? We get the tension inside the sept of what's going on, of course, right? And the music will change. I noticed a lot of times, like I think when we're in the tunnel, we hear like the pipe organs, and then when they go to the sept, we'll start hearing the violins, and then there's like another area where they all come together, right? It's just absolutely amazing. And then Lancel gets down to the end, meets his the flames, the reflection of the flames on his eyes are just it's awesome special effects, and it just looks awesome on screen, I think, right? So, and then just watching that blow up, and you're thinking, man, this is a television show. I mean, it's like, this is freaking absolutely amazing, right? And we had a bell just come through and crush folks, right? And right, I'm gonna shut up here in a second, right? But as that fire is going through the tunnel, right, you basically hear the screams of the fire, right? It's like the fire's screaming, right?
Yeah.
And then you hear the screams of the folks inside, right? And then more screams, and then just Cersei, just periodically we would cut to Cersei prior to as she's looking on, right? But then the end and the sigh of relief and how proud she is with herself, and then the slug of wine, of course, and it's one of my favorite scenes, folks. So. Cerseis Revenge for me, Milt.
Yeah, it's sort of like, the wildfire is basically spreading and it's sucking in all that oxygen from the surrounding air, and it's making that kind of whoosh sound, like it's about, it's like the sound of impending doom here. And great scene. This scene is like, almost universally regarded by a lot of the Game of Thrones fans as being one of their favorites, if not their favorite scene, because it was just so shot, it was like shot so well, and basically directed so well, and the whole story behind Cerseis Revenge, basically culminated in this one scene where she basically blew up all her enemies for the most part, and she becomes queen. And a lot of good characters got wiped out from this scene. You can't forget the High Sparrow, can't forget Marjorie, right? Lancel, Loras, even Mace Tyrell, right? Mace the Ace got his ass whooped here, and it's and then afterwards Tom will die, but it's just one of these things where it's high death rate for a lot of major characters here. Pycelle also, and it's great. I mean, in terms of just the revenge and how all these just a sequence of all of these events just happen to come together at once, realistically or unrealistically, as you said, and basically tilted in Cersei's favor, and boom, she's the all-powerful queen of Westeros, or at least of King's Landing. So so what do you think would have happened if Lancel was just like a couple of steps quicker with that trying to extinguish that wildfire? Dog.
If Sansa did what?
If Lancel was just kind of like maybe a couple of steps quicker with that wildfire.
Well, that's what I was wondering about too, right? Yeah. Where there's still been enough heat, like say he because like I noticed that too, like when he first gets there, you can just tell like he doesn't even have a breath left.
Yep.
Right. He is, he's basically just exhausted from being injured and having to do the crawl, right? And it's hard to show that visually, right? But I could kind of see that that's what had happened, right? He didn't even have a breath left to do it, right? But had he got there in time, I don't know if the wildfire still would have extinguished. Would there have been enough heat?
Yeah.
Still, I don't know how how much heat do we need to actually get wildfire to extinct, inflame, if you will, right?
Yeah. So somebody needs to look up the flash point of wildfire. So we need to figure out what the flash point is for wildfire.
I'm sorry?
We need to figure out what the flash point is for wildfire.
The flash point. Thank you, Mel.
Yeah, so anyway, and nobody knows that. Yeah, I mean, I don't even have a guess at this
I
point.
mean, I bet you it's lower than like wood.
Yeah,
I don't, or I don't, I'm just thinking.
I mean,
That's a good
it could be
point.
like
Well,
it could be like gasoline. That's my thinking, or turpentine or something like that. But then again, it seems to be pretty dense and viscous too. Oh, I
but,
don't know.
but I tell you
It's
what,
something
when
that
it
we can
goes
think
up,
about.
it looks beautiful on screen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. The green color makes it look really cool for sure. Anyway, it's one of these things that we can talk about later. And all right, so number two, okay, number two on the Westerosi Ninjas list is the Lannister victory at King's Landing. Basically, the episode Blackwater, season 2, E9, episode 9. Basically, the battle's over. We have won. And what made this so special was basically, to me, was the interaction of Cersei and Tommen. I mean, Cersei was going to basically kill off her youngest son, okay, rather than basically give him over to the wolves. In this case, it'd be the Baratheon army, right, forces of Stannis. And she just told this really, really great, almost like a fairy tale story to Tommen to comfort him. I mean, this is one of the prime examples where Cersei did really love her children, at least in the show, okay, guys, and basically try to comfort him, before she was just basically going to kill him, rather than just save him the humiliation and the punishment and execution by Stannis. And one of the great lines in the story was that they will all come to you, little lion, to rest a crown upon your head, which is actually kind of prophetic in a way, right? Because everybody did come at least to Tommen, later on in season 4, to basically rest the crown upon his head. And it starts off with, in the Kingswood, there lived a mother and her cub. See, it's almost like a little fairy tale and a little, folk story that she's basically comforting Tommen with. And I'm not sure if she made it up or if this is actually a real story in the lore, but I thought she just did a really, really great job here. And then, and then basically while she's telling the story, there are a lot of flash, cuts in, to the battle outside of King's Landing, right? You see the forces of the Lannisters and the Tyrells coming in, to help defeat the Baratheons, and then at the end of the scene, what happens is that, Cersei's about ready to basically, Tom's about ready to basically, drink that poison from that vial there. And then boom, the doors open and guess who comes in, right? Okay, besides Loras Tyrell, good old my man Tywin Lannister comes in. And basically, Cersei has that look of joy, right? You kind of see that picture in the bottom right-hand corner. It's like, whoa, shit, no, you just saved me, Dad. And the last words of the whole episode was, "The battle's over. We have won." I thought that was great. Great timing, really dramatic ending, and it's always good to see my man Tywin, step in there and be the hero. So I don't know. I love this scene. I think it's great. It was the climax of a really, really good episode, and I think Cersei, just basically, hit it out of the ballpark with her portrayal, of basically a really loving mom that would rather kill her own child than basically give her up to her enemies, and it was great. I mean, it was great. I mean, it's a lot different than what she ended up being in season 6 and 7 for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, she's definitely changed, right? I mean, since the events that have occurred, from like season 5 and the Tommen situation, right? But yeah, she was definitely different, and this is what made her such a great character to me. And I think I made her my top villain. I think last week, right, Milt? So
Yep.
It seems like this, right, where the villain can have like these moments where you love them, right? You feel for them, you empathize for them, right? Mm-hmm. And this was one of those moments where she did it absolutely perfectly, right? And I like to think, Milt, that she made that story up as she, she made that story up. I like to believe that, right? Maybe she didn't, maybe somebody else told her that story, but the great part I love about that story, and I might be wrong on this, but I think like at the point when she talks about you are a lion, I think they kind of showed the scene of Tyrion not laying on the battlefield,
Yep,
right?
that's correct. That's for sure. Yeah, he
And
was wounded.
and that's what always solidified it, because I know we've seen a lot of folks that might think that Tyrion might not be a Lannister and things of that nature, but for some reason, to me, that always symbolized and cemented the fact that Tyrion was definitely He is a Lannister. He's definitely a Lion, just from just from the words and the way that scene kind of played out a little bit. So beautiful scene, Milt, and this is a fantastic scene here. One of my favorites too.
Yeah,
So
and it's a great point. And I think somebody else actually mentioned it in the chat. I forgot who, but I think I saw something to that reference too, where yeah, after she talks about the lions, and then it really does cut over to Tyrion Lannister, like you said. And yeah, I mean, take it for what it is, but it kind of does cement him being a true Lannister. And I mean, I just love the scene only because I think the acting, especially by Lena Headey in this, was just so perfect. It was just so on point here. And that's really a beautiful story, because it also talks about, like, how the woes and the stags are gonna come, and basically, kneel in front of you and that kind of stuff, to rest that crown upon your head. So it's, yeah, I would love to, I would love to think that it is a, kind of like a made up story by Cersei, demonstrating maybe her intelligence here, and her, and her level of love towards her children, to try to comfort them in this time of peril. But yeah, I mean, just love it. Great scene. And we can never ignore, again, my hero Tywin Lannister at the end, with those two sentences: "The battle is over. We have won." Boom. Cut. So all right, guys, so we are now on our number one all-time favorite scenes from Game of Thrones. And Dawg, you are up.
All right, and everybody knew this was my favorite right here, right? So, I mean, this is what I like to call pure bad assery, right? So, this is season 3, episode 4, and now his watch is ended. This is the moment where Dany takes the Unsullied from the I forgot what the heck. What's that guy's name, Milt?
It's Krasny's Mo Laklas.
See, that's why he is the trivia master, folks, the grand master of trivia, folks.
So, Krasny's.
Thank you very much, sir. But yeah, this, and I've mentioned this a few times, folks. This is the scene from this show. Like, I know a lot of times, we watch shows, we'll watch a season or two, and sometimes we lose track of them sometimes, right? But this wasn't one of those shows for me, right? So, I'd watch season 1, season 2, but this particular scene right here was the one that I just felt cemented my fandom, if you will, into the show, right? Where no matter what, I was going to watch the next episode. I was going to continue being in the chat rooms, right? And still keeping up to date on the news and things of that nature. It was this scene right here that did it for me, right? I just loved how everybody was in awe of the dragon, right? They weren't even paying attention to what little Dany was doing, right? I mean, Jorah and Barristan kind of were, right? They could understand the language, of course, right? They were looking at Dany the whole time, but everybody else is just like looking up at the sky. What's going on up here, right? And he's just like, Dany says, touch your toes. Dany says, turn around. Dany says, destroy all the wise masters and and free all the freaking slaves, right? Because this guy has just absolutely agitated me and just basically keeps insulting me this whole entire time, right? And to the point of now that he wants to prosper from things I absolutely hate in this world that I'm going to bring an end to, right? And I think that's the kind of things that I see from from that moment right there, is the things that she absolutely hates in the world she's going to destroy. And this is where she's going to start right here. And of course the music's freaking absolutely phenomenal here. The drums and the freaking chorus and all that awesomeness that absolutely goes with the scene, right? I love the end of it, right? Especially that my favorite part is when she's talking to the Unsullied, right? And she's just like, look, I talked to you today as free men, right? Would you fight for me? Because because it's in your heart, right? Because I've won your heart over, right? and not because I'm cracking you with a whip kind of thing, right? You know, there was a lot more that I saw in that scene, and things that I liked about Dany and things of that nature. And it's just such a great moment on the show, and just ended with that beautiful, a scene of the army leaving and the dragons flying over and the music and roll credits, right? So, yeah, this was the scene that kept me around, folks. So it will always be probably my number one for a long time.
Yeah, and great scene. And I'm not sure if y'all have caught the our top five, like, WTF moments, what the F moments of a Game of Thrones. But this is one of my scenes. It was like number 5 on my list here. And what really bothered me here was the fact that Krasny's, right, he didn't have any bodyguards like pointing weapons at Dany, when he made this transaction. I mean, he must be the worst arms dealer ever in history, And wouldn't you think, if you're trading like 10,000 soldiers for a dragon, that you would at least kind of like point some weapons at the other person, just to make sure that they don't pull anything funny, like Sage or Karis, and basically, blow up and basically burn you. So, yeah, so I can't give Krasny's any credit for being a very good businessman at all, in this scene, but nevertheless, this was a really, really, again, powerful scene. I mean, it shows actually kind of Dany's, like, Daenerys's, like, ruthlessness here in a way, right? That she was just able to basically, strike the deal, get the soldiers, and basically kill the other guy, just like that, and boom, she gets everything. She gets the dragons back, and she gets the soldiers to basically fight in her wars. So, yeah, great scene. The music was awesome. The scene, the cinematography was great. Showing those dragons at the end, right? Just basically flying over, and the fire, right? You see, especially in that lower left-hand corner, right? You see Daenerys, and all that fire just basically, behind her. It's really prophetic and really, yeah, it's really cool. And yeah, I mean, it's a great scene, dog. And this episode is really, really cool too. I mean, a lot of good stuff happened in this episode. Yeah. I think this was like in your top 5 list of favorite episodes as well, right?
Definitely was in my top 5.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So, all right, guys. So it's time for my number 1. And this is like one of the best moments of all time in Game of Thrones. And it's basically the dwarf lives until we find a cock merchant moment, right? From Unbowed, Unbent, and Unbroken, season 5 and E6. I mean, this is like the best line ever, right? And best scene ever in the game, in the whole TV show. I mean, it starts out basically with Jorah and Tyrion just having this, like, existential discussion about, do you believe that there's a plan for this world, and stuff like that. Why am I following Daenerys? Because she was born from fire, blah blah blah. And basically, they spot this pirate ship, but for some reason they decide not to, like, turn the other way, but instead they get captured and seen, right? So, and these guys are really hard ass slavers, that basically, firstly what they do is they, the guy punches, Jorah in the face. Malco is the guy's name, the head slaver. He punches Jorah in the face and brings him down. Got a lot of fight in you, huh, boy? and then basically then they try to kill Tyrion because evidently dwarf penises are worth a lot in Essos, and I don't know how. I don't know why, but of course, this is another example of Tyrion's intelligence and wit, right? He basically asked that question. Well, the buyer needs to know, if this actually came from a dwarf, and how could he know unless he was actually alive? Great logical point there, and perfectly true. And of course, Malco, comes in with that line. You know what, Tyrion, you are right. The dwarf he needs to live until we find a cock merchant. So, funniest line the whole series. A great scene. But you know what? It's not really my number 1. My number 1 is
what?
It's basically the scene with the most raw emotion, I believe, in the whole entire series. And it's basically from my most favorite episode, right? It's basically from Fire and Blood, season 1, episode 10, right? Ends with I'll kill them all, every one of them. And this was just such. This scene gave me goosebumps. I mean, it's the way it was shot. I mean, look at that lighting. While Robb Stark's being, he's basically becoming a lumberjack here essentially. The lighting's great. It's basically like during the dawn, it appears. And, but in the beginning, you just kind of see, Catelyn Stark, after finding out about Ned's beheading, just basically walking like a zombie, out of the camp trying to find her son. And she just seems so sad and just so, it's just so downridden, if you will. And she was just trying to maintain that face. And you could just feel her pain, right? Trying to maintain that face of the proper lady, of Winterfell. And then she just basically, finally collapses and basically leans up against a tree until she hears those noises of Robb basically swinging that sword. And, she walks up to Robb, and Robb's crying, whacking away that tree, and basically, Robb, you ruined her sword. That was a really heart-wrenching, pure, emotive line there. And that's all she said. And Robb didn't say a damn word, right? He basically just looked at her, dropped his sword, went up to Catelyn for comfort, and, says those words about, he'll kill them all. And then, Catelyn's just staring blankly, telling them that we can't do anything until we get the daughters. And afterwards, she just says, as the scene cuts, and then we will kill them all after we get the daughters. But in terms of just pure emotion, this episode was great because there were a lot of scenes of pure emotion here, but of raw emotion. But this is probably the rawest emotion of any scene ever in the show, in my opinion. And it was touching, great acting. It was so believable and realistic that I don't know. I don't have enough words to describe it other than the fact that it's my favorite. And I can keep on watching this, and it's just great. I love it. The acting was just so perfect and on point here, and the writing and everything was great.
Oh, sorry, Mo.
I'm done.
Just trying to say, this is a very powerful scene, and you're right on the money. It's tough to describe with words here, right? Because I like melancholy stuff and drama and things of that nature, right? And this is like right my cup of tea, if you will, right? So it just really shows the devastation that's occurred and how things look absolutely lost right now. The daughters are gone, right? Ned's gone, right? Robb is an absolute mess, right? Things of that nature. But at the same time, there's still hope, right? There's still some words of encouragement from his mother, things of that nature, right? The music's phenomenal in this as well too. And at least we're left with a little bit of hope, right? As Catelyn tells us, and then we will kill them all, right? Of course. And that, of course, kind of lead into King in the North, of course, right? But this is a tough one to put in words, Milt. But I can see why it's top on your list for sure, right? This was definitely a scene, in season one that made me go, this is why I love these characters, all of them, right? Pretty much I love all these characters and all these actors and actresses, of course, right? But absolutely fantastic choice there, Mel.
Yeah, and great list too that you had. And so we are done with our list. So we're just gonna go do a recap of our choices. So we're gonna start with Dawg and his choices tonight.
Sure. And my number 5, folks. We did a top 5. My number 5 here, folks, was the departure of Janos Slynt. Number 4, I had Tyrion and the turtle soup incident. Right. Number 3, I had the Lami's Avenged. Right. I called it Lami's Avenged. Number 2, I had Cerseis Revenge. And number 1, I had pure badassery by Dany, the Dragons, and the Unsullied, folks. So that was my top 5 favorite scenes of all times. These were the scenes that made me go, hey, I love watching this show. I love being part of this community too. And really looking forward to season 8, folks. So thanks for doing this again, Milt.
Yeah, awesome list, Dawg. And for my list, okay, disregard the villains. I didn't change that from last week. Sorry about that, but it's basically favorite scenes. Number 5 for me was basically the King of the North, season 6, episode 10. Number 4 was the Stannis and Shireen touching moment in season 4. Season 5, episode 4. Number 3 was the Arya and Hound argument in front of the waterfall. The greatest swordsman in the world didn't have a sword. Ha ha ha. Number 2 was basically the Lannister victory at Blackwater, where Cersei is comforting Tommen before Tywin comes in there with, the battle's over, we have won. And number 1 is basically I will kill them all in the Fire and Blood episode, season 1, episode 10, and for just pure raw emotion. And that is all, guys. Thanks a lot for coming here. Hey, Dawg, so were there any scenes that you wanted to put in here that you just couldn't at this point? At this time, you're restricted.
Oh, forgive me, Mel. What was your number 2 there?
Number 2 was the Cersei and Tommen scene at the Battle of Blackwater.
That was a tough one there. Yeah. The Craster's demise with Carl Tanner. That was in there. And I meant, I think we did our stream before where Hard Home is my favorite episode in the whole entire series, right? But I was having trouble deciding, how to do that whole entire scene. I would just say all 28 minutes or however long it is, right? For that, but I couldn't really cut it into just kind of one specific scene. But those were a couple that were tough on my list. A lot of them that you have on here are close to what I would have had on my list too. So, but there's so many great scenes, and it's tough to cut it down to just 5. But again, these were the ones that were the most memorable to us folks, and things of that nature. So.
Yeah, and and again, I totally reiterate your thoughts about there's just so many memorable and really good scenes in the show that it was really tough paring it down to number 5. There was one scene from season 2 that I really wanted to put in here, and that was the Theon speech right before he gets clubbed in the back of the head, to the Ironborn. But that acting was so great, and that speech that he did, wow, was just so on point and perfect, and the way that Theon actually really believed that he was actually saying the things he was saying, from the Ironborn, and then in typical Ironborn fashion, whacked back the head, and he's basically sold off to the Boltons, right? So
it was classic Game of Thrones, just like for 1 second your hopes are up, next second whap, right?
But I would have loved to put that thing in there, but we couldn't do it, right? It was just, you want to have 5 choices, and it's just so tough. So anyway, so again, great having you on here, Dawg. And again, everybody on the chat, thanks a lot for coming by. So we have, let's do some shout outs here. We have LMR, my Rhapsody.
Real quickly, Mel, if I could. LMR is going to be doing a live stream with Marie.
Okay.
Coming up right after this stream, I believe. So they're setting up right now. So be sure to check that out, folks.
Yeah, great. Check it out. It's on LMR's channel. Is that right? Or Marie's channel?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know why I called you, sir. I thought I was back in the Navy.
Okay, great. Owen Fleming, Peter Griffin, The Imagination Realm, Game of Theories with Marie, Chrissy of Oldstones. Thanks a lot for being a mod here right now in the beginning. Sword in the Darkness, John Del Vento, Nancy T, Mother of Blankets, Bubba Husky, Nolan Burkhart, Reed Venjez, Kev, Bridge 4, Choo Choo Train, Slide the Tank Benjamin, OTDA. What else? I already said Owen Fleming, right? Rhodes Rant was here. Phil H showed up. I'm running out of room now. Lady Elena Tyrell was around.
Yeah, Ray and Bubba.
Yeah, Bubba. Yeah, Bubba Husky.
Rich, of course. Yep.
Yep.
And, I think.
Yeah, and I'm running out of room, guys.
If you haven't mentioned your name, now's the time.
Yeah, Dawg Show. So Candy, if you're out there, you better mention her, or we're gonna forget about you. So so if you didn't call anybody out, it's not because we don't like you, it's because we ran out of room. So so the trick is, if you want to be called out, come at the end and not at the beginning. So anyway, with that, thanks a lot, guys, for showing up, and we will see you again next week with another top 5 lists. Don't forget, we have trivia next week, Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and I think it's tiles format. I don't know what the subject is. Hopefully, Sorter can tell you guys in the chat, because I never know or always forget. So, but besides that, have a great rest of the weekend. Okay, you got like 4 more hours left, and we'll talk to you and see you next week.
Thanks, folks.